If you like what you're listening to, support this podcast on Patreon. Patreon.com, search Phil Dawson, or find a link in the show notes and join up. It's very much appreciated. Thank you for listening. Chapter 3. It had been nearly a month since Joyra had observed the lab session at which the Silver Man awoke. She could remember each detail of Master Malzra's technique. She'd spent the intervening time studying power stones, like the one placed in the golem's head, and poring over the artifact's design sketches. All of it was preparation for the design debrief she would be required to give. It was the price paid by all the elite students invited to observe the procedure. There remained only one more task before she was ready to write her report, actually interviewing the machine. She sighed with dread and tapped her fingers idly on the plans. She had hoped to derive a satisfactory description of the golem's intellectual and emotional performance from these plans, her research on the Thran Power Stones and first-hand observation of the refit. None of these things explained his apparent logical and effective capacities, though. She would have to interview him. Joyra glanced in surrender at the ceiling of her dormitory cell. Interviewing the machine meant winning past his self-appointed wrangler, Teferi. The boy, and at 14 he was only a boy, was one part prodigy, one part prankster, and one part pervert. Unfortunately, all three parts were madly infatuated with Joyra. She had done her best to discourage his advances, but he didn't notice subtle rebukes, and he considered unsubtle ones only affectionate horseplay. If she told him she wasn't interested, he would pledge to make her interested. If she said she hated him, he would respond that hate and love were only a hair's breadth apart, and speaking of hair's breadth, could he have a breadth of hers? She had the inkling that he had made several attempts to devise a magical love potion to win her over. Just thinking about the young man, the boy, he was only a boy, exasperated Joyra. She stood from her desk and paced the small square room she occupied in the academy. If only Teferi could glimpse a real man, could glimpse the man she had found at the seaside and had provisioned and kept secret in her stony hideaway. No, nobody could know about Carrick except for her. That's the way it was and the way it should be. Joyra sat down on her cot and stared out of the window of her cell. Beyond the pitching treetops and the tumbled boulders lay the shore and her secret love. She shook her head to clear it. The sooner she interviewed the Silver Man, the sooner she could finish her report, and the sooner she could rejoin Carrick. Snatching up a sheaf of paper and a lead nib, Joyra made her way through the door and out into the academy to hunt down the Silver Man. She found him in the great hall, crouching to sit on a stump that had been hauled in specifically for him after he had broken 3 of the academy's benches. He looked dejected, hunkered down at the end of a table. Teferi held court beside him, and a passel of the prodigy's devotees clustered in a laughing bunch around. Carrots were on the menu today, and Teferi had discovered that by levitating them into various holes in the golem's skull, he could create comical ears and a long twisted nose. To these alterations came others, oily lettuce in an impoverished head of hair, and large, bulging eyes made of hard biscuits rammed into the machine's eye sockets. Joyra shook her head as she approached. If reports were right, this machine was fully aware. He knew what was being done to him, and he cared. "Does Master Malzra know what you're doing, Teferi?" The boy looked up, his impish features lighting up when he caught a sight of her. "Hello, Joyra! Have you met Artie Shovelhead?" "Does Master Malzra know what you are doing?" she repeated angrily. The 14-year-old affected a smug superiority. He nodded toward the mirrored loft where Malzra and Baron often took their lunch. "Master Malzra is keenly interested in all my adventures. I'm Baron's magical prodigy. Of course they know what I'm doing." "This artifact creature is self-aware, Teferi. He thinks, he has feelings. You can't just toy with him like this." "I can, and I do," replied Teferi. He levitated a pair of radishes to make them hover like earrings on either side of the golem's head. "What fun is it to toy with someone who doesn't have thoughts and feelings?" Exasperated, Joyra flung out her hands. "Anyway, I need to interview him." Teferi smiled. "Go right ahead. I'm his interpreter. Right, Shovelhead?" Behind his mask of biscuits and carrots, the Silver Man remained silent. Reaching out distastefully, Joyra drew a dripping leaf of lettuce from the creature's head, slug trails of salad oil glistening across his shiny brow. Did you ever think you might be damaging him, might be destroying him? This is sensitive machinery. Mr. Malzra wants it tested, Teferi replied glibly. He laced his fingers behind his head and leaned back on the bench. I'm just giving it a rigorous exam. If you're jealous, I could arrange a rigorous exam for you, back in my cell. His friends chorused a thrilled ooh at the suggestion. Joyra flushed. I'm not interested in little boys, she countered, savagely knocking the biscuits from the Silverman's face. The golem sent her a look of lost misery. Not interested in tiny, mean little boys who cut the eyes out of sparrows and stomp roses into the ground and empty their bladders on anything beautiful and good. That's what you are, Teferi. You're not even a nasty little boy, but an infant who can't control his own body, can't recognize anybody else as real, can't do anything but whine and cry and soil yourself and everybody around you. You're going to have to do lots of growing up before you'll be anything more than a squalling baby. Joyra punctuated this triad by yanking forth the variously placed carrots. Teferi was silent. His face grew pale, as though the flush of Joyra's features sucked the color out of his. By the time she was finished, his lip was quivering. His eyes were as wide and staring as the biscuits on the floor. Joyra reached down gently, regally, and took the Silverman's hand. Let's go. I have a lot of questions to ask you. The probe rose, as though his half-ton bulk could have been lifted by her one slender hand. Looking back over his shoulder, the Silverman followed Joyra, dejection and confusion in his bowed shoulders. Baron was nettled. He let go of the rail that overlooked the great room and paced in front of it. Through a one-way glass enchanted by the mage himself, they had both witnessed the incident with the carrots and biscuits and hundreds of other pranks Teferi had played on the hapless golem. These occasions seemed only to mildly amuse Urza. They made Baron furious. I can't understand why you allow it, he stormed. Here is the first truly living artifact creature you have created, and yet you surrender him to the depredations of that vulture. Living things have to live, Baron, Urza said calmly. If Teferi breaks down the probe, we'll know it needs to be redesigned. Breaks down? Redesigned? That's not what you do with living things. They have to live, as you said. This golem of yours is only a month old. Give him time. Time is all I give him. We'll attempt another regression at the end of this month, Urza said, heading toward the chamber door. Meanwhile, said Baron grimly, I'm going to ask Joyra to look after him, to keep him away from Teferi. I really don't understand why you refuse to let me expel that troublemaker. Urza turned back into the open doorway. I keep him here because he is a magical genius, driven and destined to greatness. Maybe a social nuisance, yes, but I was one too. You still are, Baron observed tartly. But Teferi's more than a nuisance. Joyra said it best. He's selfish, he's dangerous, he hurts people without the thought or an apology. He takes no responsibility for his actions. I don't care about his potential. Until he grows up, he will leave a path of destruction in his wake. You have said the same of me before, Urza blinked, considering. Yes, I keep Teferi here because he reminds me of me. Joyra ushered the Silver Man into a room. He had to turn sideways to fit through the arched doorway, and once within, merely stood there, as stiff and fearful as an adolescent boy. It's all right. I'm not going to bite, Joyra assured. She gestured the golem in so that he could swing the door closed behind him. The click of the latch made the room feel even smaller. Despite his stooped shoulders and silent demeanor, the probe seemed especially massive in that moment. Joyra skirted around him and busied herself tidying the room. It's not much, I know, but it's all I need in private. She snatched up a conspicuous undergarment and secreted it within a basket in one corner. Here's my bed, she continued, nervously straightening the slate-gray blanket on it and fluffing the pillow, as though she expected the Silverman to lie down on it. Here's where I keep my clothes, the student robes hanging in that bone inlaid wardrobe over there, and my knockabout clothes here in this drawer. That's one drawback of being made of skin. You have to cover it all the time. That felt forced. Joy reminded herself this was a man of metal, no more interested in her undergarments than a doorknob would be. Here's something you'll like. She reached up to a low shelf above her drafting desk and drew down a small metal pendant. It was fashioned to resemble a lizard man dressed in heavy robes. This is from my homeland, Shiv. It's metal. Not just metal, but Viashino metal. There's some of the hardest stuff in the world. Unthinking, she tossed the trinket to the golem. One massive hand snatched the item from the air, the first movement the golem had made since settling into stillness. He stared down at it.
It is hard.
he agreed in a voice like the distant rumble of a waterfall.
It scratched me.
Joyra's brow furrowed. She crossed the floor to look. Two small scratches marked the Silverman's palm. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Let me get something for. She broke into laughter, backed up, and slumped up onto the bed. The Silverman leaned forward.
What is it? Did I say something stupid?
No, no, Joyra assured. I did. It's me. If one of my other friends had gotten scratched, I'd have pressed a rag on it to stop the bleeding, but you can't bleed. Still, I was going to get a rag.
One of your other friends?
The golem echoed. Oh, I'm just nervous. I don't know why. She sat up soberly on the bed. I don't really have a lot of friends. I don't usually let anybody else in here. And I know you're just a machine, but you seem so real, so much like a person.
So much like a person.
She shook her head and fetched a rag from among her drafting supplies. Still, you could use one of these. I've been going on, and there you stand, vinegar dripping from your head. Flipping the rag in one hand, she walked to the golem and began wiping away the liquid. You know, in my tribe back home in Shiv, they put oil on somebody's head to honor him. It's called anointing. Get to do it when you're born and when you set out on a vision quest and when you need healing and when you've just been saved from death. She patiently dabbed away the streams of liquid and polished the creature's shiny pate.
Maybe that's what happened to me,
said the silver man.
Maybe I've just been anointed.
You're lucky it was just oil and vinegar. Knowing Teferi, it could have been something much worse.
It wasn't Teferi who anointed me,
the silverman rumbled.
It wasn't Teferi who saw that I needed healing.
Joyra smiled sadly, wiping the last of the oil away. She gestured at the pendant. You can keep it. They're supposed to be lucky. They're good to have with you on a vision quest. She wiped her hands on another cloth and tossed both into the basket in the corner. Anyway, I'm doing a treaty on you, and I have some questions, if you don't mind.
The silver man said solemnly, You are the first person to ask whether I minded anything.
Joyra nodded distractedly. She drew a large folio of sketches from beneath her drafting table and selected a number of rattling sheets from it. She spread them out on the workspace.
These are drawings of me,
observed the golem. Yes, this is the final set of plans for you before the Power Stone was implanted. Front, back, left, right, top, and bottom views. There's a detail of your torso. You've got a lot of room in there. And here's your head, she said as she pointed to each matrix of gray lines and gearwork.
This legend names me only Probe 1, the golem indicated.
Yes, responded Joyra. Master Malzra is not very imaginative when it comes to names. Still, it's better than Artie Shovelhead. One of the golem's massive fingers traced out a bracket that indicated the whole frame of the construct. Beside it was a call-out that said simply, Karn.
I like this name better. What does it mean?
Joyra looked up from the sketch, her eyes narrowed intently as she studied the golem's gleaming features. That's Old Thran. I don't know much of the language. Even Master Malzra doesn't know much of it, but I know that word. It means mighty.
Karn,
the golem repeated thoughtfully. Joyra smiled again. Yes, that's a good name. That's your name, Karn. She turned back to the table. Now, these sketches on this side show the Power Stone and its integration into the superstructure. The point of my treaty is to explain how an automaton becomes a thinking, feeling creature simply through the addition of a crystal. I haven't been able to figure it out by looking at these diagrams, even by watching the operation. I can't imagine how a Power Stone, especially one that looked dead like the one inside you, could give a creature thought and life and soul.
Perhaps it isn't a Power Stone, offered Karn quietly.
Not a Power Stone, Joyra wondered. Then what would it be?
I don't know. But without it, I am nothing, Karn observed. I've seen myself without it. I'm just a pile of metal.
Seen yourself? Joyra asked. She turned toward the silver man and took his hand conspiratorially. Karn, just what is it they have you do in there? I know Master Malzra's been running secret experiments with you at the center of them. He's been building some kind of big machine. I've worked on parts of it, but none of us can guess what it does, and there's been something strange about the school since you arrived. Something about the air. It feels like waves moving through a tidal pool or something. Do these experiments have anything to do with that? An insistent knock came at the door. Joyra's face hardened. It's Teferi, the little rat. Then, to the door, just a moment. The knock came again.
It's Mage Baron,
I've come for the probe, and I have a request to make of you, Joyra. Joyra hurried to the door, opened it, and bowed slightly. We were just in the middle of the interview, but we can talk later. Would you mind, Karn?
Not at all,
replied the Silver Man.
I would like that.
He turned sideways to slide out the arched doorway. Baron backed up to make room. Karn? Yes, responded Joyra. That's his name. What was your request? Night drew down around Talaria. The dying sun burnished rooftops of blue tile, giving them a bronze patina. The glimmer moon peered palely over the treetops. Hot, dense breaks of jungles chittered with the final choruses of the day. Birds and night birds raised their first ululating songs. White waves along the shore glowed golden over burgundy seas. Throughout the afternoon, a hot, still column of air had stood upon the isle, but now, before evening breezes, it shifted and uncoiled until trees and students and all shivered in relief. Joyra was among them. She crouched in the shadowy lee of the academy's eastern wall, breathing slowly. The culvert where she lurked had been designed as a runoff for garter robes, but the building it served became a lab instead of a dorm. A series of grates fastened into the passage and a main sluice gate were meant to secure the passage against invaders. Joyra first noticed the unused duct and plans of the buildings. She had quite an eye for details on a page. The prospect of having her own entrance and exit to the academy had been enticing. It would allow her to skirt strict curfews. She didn't actually remove the bolts until she had devised replacements that would hold the passage secure to all but her. She was not selfish enough to jeopardize the security of the whole school for the sake of her own private amusements. Private amusements, she smiled. Carrick would have been flattered by the title. Their liaison had lasted for 2 months, surely more than a passing amusement. Before she reached him, Joyra had to slip past the guards, both human and clockwork. They would be more vigilant now in the shifting air than they had been in the hot, still afternoon. She dared not open the gate until she heard her friend above. "There it is again!" one of the men shouted overhead. "Look out! Damn bird!" cursed another. "Bird my eye!" a third yelled. "They make 'em in there. They're wind-up toys." She heard her shrieking toy bird dive and harry the men on the wall. It was a simple construction, weighing the equal of 2 pieces of paper, but it was fast and shrill. She discovered the plans and some ancient designs by none other than Tawnos, legendary assistant to the legendary Urza. It didn't matter who actually designed the feathery flying machines. It mattered only that she could make them easily and... "Ah! It's in my hair! Bash it with a glaive! No, it's in my hair, damn it! Hold still!" "They banned the things. They circulated a memo. That's what they said. Let them guard up here and get this damn thing stuck in there." Little mechanical birds were as adept at mischief as Teferi himself. During the next exclamation, Joyra swung the gate outward, rolled from the sluice, closed the metal, set her special pins, and crawled away into the underbrush. There, breathless, she paused. There was a hammering noise above and the sticky flapping of ruined wings. Someone stomped a final time, and there was silence. Then, "See, it's not a real bird at all. See where the quills are folded into this paper loop? And here, this hard part, that's what smells your sweat. They make these things to dive on us. The twerp's too young, too pasty-faced and frail, too sweat. If I ever catch a little prodigy that's making these, he's watching us right now, I'll wager. There, that's what you do with your invention, you little twerp." Joyra tried not to giggle as she made her way through the dense forest. She knew the path perfectly. It was narrow and shaded, exposed only after the hillsides below on the western bank. She moved without breaking twigs or tearing leaves. They were her allies in this deception. As long as no one found the forest path, no one would find the rocky niche she kept above the shifting sea. As long as no one discovered the rocky niche, no one would know about Carrick. In an hour's time, she topped the final shoulder of the parched earth above the niche. Already the sun had quit the sky. A russet blanket of clouds covered the world. The hooded lantern she had brought to spot glinted faintly through a crevice. Peering through the crack, she saw the bookshelf Carrick had improvised from stones and flat slabs of driftwood. The shelf burgeoned with volumes on loan from the academy. Carrick was an avid reader. He had little else to do during his days and said he hoped to gain enough knowledge of artifice that he could apply for admittance. He was a good reader, a better trapper, and a superior cook. Even now, Joyra could smell the savory aroma of salt marsh, hair sizzling on a skillet. Carrick had dressed the creature with wild spearmint and scallions. Jorah's knees melted. What the academy served could not even be considered food next to fare like that. Drawn by those aromas, Joyra tiptoed around the corner. Beside the sizzling skillet were a pair of slim, bronzed feet crossed over each other. As she approached, she saw the long, muscular legs attached to those feet, the man's ragged trousers, his tattered shift, his strong hands, clutching yet another book. Then there was his handsome face, his beautiful golden curls. Joyra's knees melted again. What the Academy had to offer could not even be considered manhood next to fare like this. Joyra leapt into his lap and wrapped him in eager arms and kisses. "I've been waiting all day to see you." Laughter danced in his eyes. "Rotten day?" "You have no idea," she said between kisses. "There's a little tyrant prig who thinks his job is making everyone miserable." "Yeah, Teferi," Carrick replied. "I've mentioned him before?" "Often," Carrick said. "He said he had a crush on you, but you're the one always talking about him." "He's a child," she replied indignantly. "I talk about him like I would talk about a goblin infestation." Carrick shrugged. He shifted toward the fire to turn the hare meat, and Joyra caught a whiff of his musky scent. It was not the reek of worry, but the strong animal smell of a man who works beneath the sun. Over his shoulder, the man said idly, "Teferi seems one of your only friends." "Oh?" Joyra replied archly. "I spend too much time out here to have any other friends, and I don't hear you complaining." "No, you don't." "Besides, I have made a new friend. He's stronger than you, taller than you, younger than you, more polite, definitely more polite." A delicious flash of jealousy showed in Carrick's eyes. "Then why are you here?" "He's a machine," Joyra said, rolling the man into another embrace. "He's a thinking, feeling machine, and I think he also has a crush on me." "Really?" Carrick replied. "Is the feeling mutual?" "It is," Joyra teased brightly, "and a little jealousy will do you some good. I've gotten quite comfortable living here in my secret place." "Stronger than me, taller than me, younger than me. If you want me to be really jealous, bring out the plans so I can obsess over them." "You'll have them tomorrow if you return your overdue books," said Joyra. "Now come back here. Those steaks need another few moments, and so do I." She dragged him with her onto the pallet and drew the scent of him and sizzling steaks into her chest. She could put up with 100 Teferis as long as she had her escape route, her paper birds, and her wild, secret love.
What does Urza see in Teferi? The little monster's nothing like Urza at any age. For one thing, Teferi has a sense of humor. That is perhaps his only redeeming trait, aside from his undeniable brilliance. Still, Teferi uses his brilliance only to tear things apart, not to build them up. Urza has always been a builder, and a serious one. On the other hand, Urza's creations, his clockwork men, his war towers, his powder bombs and power armor have always been used to destroy. The sum of Urza's constant creation is always destruction. Ironic, isn't it? Do I dare to hope that in the end, Teferi's constant destruction will bring about new creation? Barrett, Mage Master of Talaria.